She set his coffee down without a word. No kiss, no good morning, no pause to see if he'd look up. He didn't. Amelia Hartwell had loved Nathaniel Brooks for 3 years, 2 months, and 11 days. She knew because she had counted not out of obsession, but the way a prisoner counts sunrises. Not hoping, just marking time, she picked up her bag. She walked to the door. She opened it. He was still looking at his phone. She closed the door behind her, quietly, finally, and did not look back. If this story lives somewhere in your chest, subscribe, follow until the very last word, and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far one woman's silence can travel. The coffee was still hot when Nathaniel finally reached for it. He didn't notice it was already poured. He didn't notice the exact temperature the way she always set it at the moment it hit 190 degrees, because she knew he burned his mouth on anything hotter. He didn't notice that the mug was the one she'd ordered from a small ceramics shop in Vermont after he'd mentioned once, almost in passing, that he liked the weight of a heavier cup. He picked it up. He drank it. He opened his laptop. Amelia was gone. 3 years ago, Nathaniel Brooks had walked into a fundraising event for a community development nonprofit in downtown Boston and done something he almost never did. He'd noticed someone. Not the way men notice women at events like that, cataloging, assessing, moving on. He'd noticed her, the way you notice a river running beneath a city street. Something fundamental, something quiet, something you couldn't quite explain why you kept stopping to look at. She was fixing a microphone. That was it. That was the whole thing. A speaker had stepped back from the podium mid-sentence because the mic had gone dead. And every other person in the room had frozen in that peculiar social paralysis of witnessing a technical failure in public, and this woman had simply appeared from the side of the stage, fixed the connection in under 15 seconds, and disappeared back into the crowd before anyone had fully processed what happened. Nathaniel had watched the whole thing. He crossed the room after the program ended. He didn't think about it. He just went. That was impressively invisible, he said. She turned, dark eyes. A slight tilt of the head. Solving problems quietly is still solving them, she said. Nathaniel Brooks. He extended his hand. I know who you are. She shook it. Amelia Hartwell. You organized this event? Part of it. I'd like to take you to dinner, he said. He wasn't a man who circled around things. She looked at him not the way women usually looked at him, which was with some mixture of interest and calculations, but steadily, like she was reading something in small print. You can try, she said. He had thought she was being coy. He understood now, much too late, that she had been telling him the truth. You can try, Nathaniel. The question is whether you'll keep trying once the novelty wears off. He hadn't kept trying. He'd stopped trying before he'd ever properly begun. And she had stayed anyway, loving him quietly, invisibly, the way she fixed microphones, solving a problem that the whole room benefited from, without anyone knowing who to thank. The first year, Amelia made excuses for him the way you make excuses for weather. He's building something. He has pressure she can't see. He shows love differently. Give him time. She believed every word. That was the thing she couldn't forgive herself for later, not that she'd stayed, but that she'd stayed so willingly, so without resentment, genuinely convinced that the man she'd seen in glimpses laughing low at something she said. Reaching for her hand in a movie theater without thinking, standing in the kitchen at midnight eating cereal, and talking to her about nothing in particular, that man was the real one. The distracted man, the absent man, the man who looked through her during dinner and called it a long week. That was the temporary one, the one the stress made. She believed that for a year. The second year she stopped making excuses and started making accommodations. She stopped telling him about the hard days because his responses, "That sounds frustrating, babe," while scrolling, "I'm sure it'll work out," without looking up, made her feel further from him than silence did. She stopped suggesting restaurants because the cancellations carved something out of her each time. She stopped reaching for him in the dark. She learned the exact shape of the space she was allowed to occupy, and she stayed inside it, carefully, making herself small enough that her presence wouldn't inconvenience him. She accommodated. She compressed. She told herself this was what loving someone looked like sometimes. She was wrong. But she didn't know that yet. The third year was different. The third year she woke up, not with a dramatic realization. Not in a single moment. The way you fall asleep, gradual, then suddenly gone. She woke up the same way. Gradual, then all at once. One Tuesday morning in March, standing in the kitchen holding a coffee mug, and she thought, when did I stop telling him things? She went back through her memory. A week? 2 weeks? Longer? She realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd told Nathaniel something real. Something that mattered. She couldn't remember the last conversation where she'd said something true and he'd actually heard it. She stood there in the kitchen and took a long, slow breath. And quietly, so quietly, she barely heard it herself, something inside her closed. How did the interview go? Elliot Monroe was standing in her office doorway at 7:45 in the morning, holding 2 coffees, wearing the expression of someone who had genuinely been thinking about this question since the previous day. It was Amelia's 3rd week at the Hartwell Community Outreach Center, a directorship she'd interviewed for 6 weeks ago, prepared for obsessively, and gotten without telling Nathaniel until it was done. She hadn't told him about the interview at all. She'd tried. She'd mentioned it at breakfast the morning of, I have that interview today, the directorship position, and he'd said, Good luck, without looking up from his phone. She'd called him right after, walking out of the building, heart still hammering. He hadn't answered. He'd texted 2 hours later in meetings. Talk tonight. That night he'd come home at 10:30, poured a drink, sat in his chair, and told her the Westfield project had complications. She'd sat across from him and waited. He'd talked about the Westfield project for 20 minutes. He never asked. She never told him. She'd texted, I got the job at 11:15 that night and gone to bed. He'd left a thumbs-up emoji sometime after midnight. So when Elliot appeared in her doorway 3 weeks later, asking how did the interview go, about an interview he'd only heard about in passing. From a single sentence she'd mentioned, while they were both looking at grant documents, she felt something strange move through her chest. He remembered. It went well, she said clearly. He grinned. Right, you're here, I forgot. He set one of the coffees on her desk. How are you settling in? Good. Really good, actually. Yeah? He leaned against the doorframe. It's different from what you expected. It's more, she said, more than I expected, in a good way. People here are going to be annoying about how good you are at this, he said conversationally. Fair warning. We're all very enthusiastic people. She laughed, actually laughed, which surprised her slightly, the way laughing had been surprising her lately. Like her body had forgotten it was allowed to. I think I can handle that. I think you can handle most things, Elliot said, easy and matter of fact, and picked up his own coffee and walked away. She sat with that sentence for a moment after he left. I think you can handle most things. Such a small thing. Such a completely ordinary thing. She turned back to her computer and didn't examine why it had landed the way it had, like water on dry ground, too fast, absorbed before she could see it sink in. At home, the shift was happening in the negative space. Nathaniel noticed it first as an absence of sound. He came home one evening, a Wednesday late past 9, and the apartment was quiet in a way that took him a moment to identify. The lights were on. The place was clean. There was food in the refrigerator. But Amelia was at the kitchen table with her laptop, and she didn't look up when he came in. She looked up a moment later. Hey, there's pasta in the pot. Then she looked back at her screen. He stood in the entryway and waited, without knowing he was waiting, for the thing that wasn't happening. The question. The particular way she'd always turned toward him when he came home, like a compass needle finding north, like his arrival was an event that reorganized the room. It wasn't happening. "Good day," she said, still on the screen. "We got a grant-approved youth programming. That's great." "Yeah." He went to the kitchen. He ate the pasta standing at the counter. He watched her from across the room, head bent, one hand moving a pen across a notepad, completely absorbed, and felt something he couldn't immediately name. Not guilt. Not quite. Something more primitive. Something that had to do with the specific quality of her not looking at him. He was used to being looked at. He had not realized until this moment how much of his certainty about this relationship had rested on her looking. He went to his office. He opened his laptop. He worked until midnight. She was already asleep when he came to bed, or she appeared to be. He lay in the dark and stared at the ceiling, and didn't know why the apartment felt so much larger than it had that morning. Nathaniel. Marcus appeared in his office doorway at 9:15 the next morning, and his expression was the particular expression of a man who has information he isn't sure how to deliver. "What?" Nathaniel said. "Not looking up your 2 o'clock called to confirm they want to push to Thursday." "Fine." A pause, also another pause, longer. "I wanted to ask, Amelia's birthday is next week." "Did you want me to?" "I know when her birthday is, Marcus." "Of course. A beat. I'll leave it with you." Nathaniel didn't think about it again. He was in New York when he remembered. Closing dinner. Client across the table. Third drink. Marcus saying something about the Pemberton acquisition timeline, and the word timeline snagged something. Pulled a thread, and the thread pulled another March. Late March. She'd mentioned her birthday once. The year she'd turned 27. She'd said she usually spent it with her sister. The math arrived like a fist. He excused himself from the table. He called her in the hallway outside the restaurant, phone already at his ear before he was fully through the door. She answered on the second ring. "Amelia." Calm. Normal. Like she'd been sitting quietly, which she probably had been. "I forgot your birthday." He said it straight because he didn't know how else to say it. "I completely forgot, and I am so sorry. I'm coming home tomorrow and I want to take you somewhere, wherever you want." Nathaniel. "I'll make a reservation in the morning, or we can wait until the weekend if you." Nathaniel. "It's okay. It is absolutely not okay. I should have." "I had dinner with some people from work," she said. It was a really nice evening. He stopped. He waited for what should have come next. The hurt. The loaded silence. The carefully controlled voice that meant she was furious but had decided not to show him. These were things he knew. These were things he had a map for. "I'll call you when I land tomorrow," she said. "Get some sleep." "Amelia, good night, Nathaniel." The line went quiet. He stood outside the restaurant in the New York cold and held his phone and felt not relieved. Not guilty exactly. Afraid. The fear was specific and strange, and he couldn't fully articulate it, but it had something to do with her voice. The evenness of it. The absolute lack of anything that needed something from him. She wasn't waiting for him to fix it. She didn't seem to need him to fix it. He went back inside. He finished dinner. He said the right things to the right people. And underneath all of it, quiet and insistent and growing, was the fear he couldn't shake. She sounded fine. Why did she sound fine? He came home the next day and watched her like a man watching a map he could no longer read. She was right there, present, warm when he spoke to her. She laughed at something on the television that evening, and the laugh was real. He knew her laugh, had always been able to tell the real one from the polite one, and it was real, and it wasn't for him. He sat across from her at dinner 4 days after New York and tried to find the place in her expression where she was keeping the hurt, and he couldn't find it. "You seem different," he said. She looked up. "Different how?" "I don't know. Just different." She looked at him for a moment. "Maybe you just haven't been paying attention," she said. Not sharp. Not designed to wound, just an answer. The most honest answer available. He opened his mouth. Closed it. She went back to her food. He sat with the sentence the way you sit with a stone that's appeared in your shoe, aware of it with every step, unable to ignore it, not yet willing to stop and deal with it. Maybe you just haven't been paying attention. He had not been paying attention. He was beginning to understand that this was not a small thing. The company fundraiser was 3 weeks later, and Amelia came. She came in a dress he had never seen, deep green, simple. Nothing showy, and her hair was different, and she was already in conversation when he found her, standing near the bar with a man Nathaniel didn't immediately recognize, laughing in a way that stopped him mid-step. Not because of the laugh itself, because of what the laugh was doing to her face. He had not seen her look like that in longer than he could calculate. Open, unguarded, like she was exactly where she wanted to be. He crossed the room. "Hey," he said, appearing at her side. "Hey." She turned to him easily, no flicker of guilt or performance in her expression, just warmth. "Nathaniel, this is Elliot Monroe. He's our program coordinator. We just got the Harrison High grant confirmed today." "Congratulations." Nathaniel shook his hand. Elliot Monroe was about 30, easy in his skin, with the kind of uncomplicated openness that Nathaniel had always, privately, found slightly suspicious. Men who smiled that easily were usually hiding something. "She deserves all the credit," Elliot said, tilting his head toward Amelia. "I've been doing this work for 8 years. I've never seen anyone put together a proposal like that." "I didn't know," Nathaniel said. He meant it as a statement of fact. Elliot looked at him, a short look. Contained. "No," he said. "Well, now you do." 2 words. Flat. Not cruel, which somehow made them land harder. He spent the rest of the evening watching her work the room. She knew people. She moved between conversations with confidence he hadn't seen in her before, or had seen and not noticed, which was, he was beginning to understand, a different and worse thing. She was not the woman who waited by the door for him anymore. He didn't know when that had changed. He only knew, watching her laugh at something Elliot said from across the room, that she had not needed to wait for him to leave before she became this person. She'd just become her quietly, without announcement. While he wasn't looking, the car ride home. She was looking out the window. He was gripping the steering wheel with both hands, which he never did. "He seems to think highly of you," Nathaniel said. He was aiming for neutral. He landed somewhere short of it. "He's a good colleague," Amelia said. "Does he know about us?" She turned from the window, looked at him with an expression he couldn't decode. "Everyone at my office knows I'm in a relationship." "That's not what You were about to ask if I'd told him we were serious." Quiet. "Certain. You were going to ask it like a question, but it would have been an accusation." "That's not fair, Nathaniel." She turned back to the window. "When is the last time you asked me something about my life because you wanted to know the answer? Not to manage something. Not to verify something, just because you wanted to know." He didn't answer, because the answer was a silence that stretched back further than he wanted to measure. "I spent 3 years," she said, her voice not breaking, not rising, just carrying the full weight of what it was carrying, trying to be seen by someone who was standing right in front of me. The light ahead turned red. He stopped. She didn't look at him. The light turned green. He drove. He thought about her sentence for 6 days. He thought about it in meetings. He thought about it at his desk at 11 at night, when the building was empty. He thought about it, eating alone in the kitchen at 7:30, because she'd already eaten. She'd started eating at actual dinner time. He'd noticed, not his dinner time, not whenever he got home time. Her dinner time, and the chair across from him was empty and quiet and present in a way empty chairs rarely are. He told himself she was being unfair. He told himself she was dramatizing, that she wanted him to be something he'd never claimed to be, that she'd known who he was from the beginning. He told himself all of that. And then Marcus knocked on his office door on a Thursday morning and said, "Do you remember the Harrison High funding crisis? 3 years ago?" "Vaguely," Nathaniel said. "Private funding shortfall." It resolved. It resolved because someone ran an external donor campaign for 6 weeks. Marcus was looking at his shoes, which meant he was uncomfortable. Press coverage, phone calls, small events, generated enough to bridge the gap. And it was Amelia. Nathaniel went still. She was at a different organization at the time. She did it voluntarily. You'd mentioned the project apparently just in passing. You probably didn't even realize she'd absorbed it, and she knew you were considering pulling the funding. Marcus paused. She never told you. No, Nathaniel said. She never told me. She spent 6 weeks evenings, weekends building a campaign for a project connected to someone she was dating. And then she never said a word about it. Marcus excused himself. The door closed. Nathaniel sat at his desk. He sat there for a long time. Not working. Not thinking about the quarter or the Westfield project or the Pemberton acquisition. Just sitting with the image of Amelia 26, before she'd moved in with him, before the 3rd year and its slow erosion, spending 6 weeks, saving something she knew mattered to him. Not for credit, not for gratitude, because he'd mentioned it was important. Because she'd listened to something he'd said in passing and held on to it and acted on it, because that was who she was, a woman who solved the problem quietly and returned to the background before anyone knew to thank her. And he had given her 3 years of not noticing, 3 years of looking through her, of letting her questions about his day become wallpaper, letting her care become infrastructure, letting her love become the kind of thing you don't count because it's always there, like air, like water, like the right temperature in a coffee mug you didn't stop to think about. He stood up. He picked up his jacket. He walked out of the office at 2:15 on a Thursday afternoon, which he had not done in 4 years. She was at the kitchen table when he got home. Laptop open, pen moving. She looked up. The look was neutral. Unsurprised, like she'd stopped expecting him to do unexpected things. That alone was enough to split something open in his chest. I know about Harrison High, he said. Something shifted in her face. Small, Marcus, she said. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't do it for you to thank me. Her voice was level. Those were real kids in a real program. I did it because it was right. That's not. He stopped. Came further into the room. Didn't sit down. He hadn't earned sitting down. That's not why I'm bringing it up. Then why? Because he stopped again. The words were there. He just wasn't used to saying them without first calculating their effect. Because I realized you have been doing things like that for years. Quiet things. Things I never saw. And I have been standing in the middle of all of it. His voice wasn't steady, which was new, which he didn't try to manage. And I saw none of it. Amelia said nothing. I am sorry, he said. Not sorry you're upset. Sorry because I left you alone inside a relationship that had 2 people in it. That is not the same apology, and I know the difference now. The room held the silence carefully. Nathaniel, she said, finally. I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I'm not here to ask you to. Let me finish, he stopped. She looked at him steadily. Not coldly, not warmly. The way someone looks at something they need to see clearly before they can decide anything. You didn't lose me when I walked away, she said. You lost me every day you chose not to see me. The words fell into the room and lay there between them. He didn't move to pick them up. He didn't qualify them or defend against them. I know, he said. Outside, the Charles River was doing what it always did, moving through the dark. Indifferent, unhurried. Not waiting for anyone. Inside, 2 people stood in a kitchen with the full weight of 3 years between them, and no clean way forward, and no going back. And Nathaniel Brooks, for the first time in longer than he could honestly say, stopped thinking about what came next. He just stood there, present, in the room, looking at her. The morning after Nathaniel said I know, Amelia woke up at 6:15 and lay still in the dark and waited to feel something different. She didn't. That was the thing nobody told you about the moment someone finally saw you. It didn't automatically fix the years they spent looking past you. The words were real. She believed he meant them. But meaning something and being something were 2 entirely different countries, and she had spent 3 years learning the distance between them. She got up. She made coffee. She went to work. Nathaniel was still asleep. She noticed that, and then she noticed that she no longer felt anything particular about it, and that the absence of feeling told her more than any conversation could have. The drive to the South End took 22 minutes. She had started looking forward to those 22 minutes more than almost anything else in her day. The city moving past the windows, the radio low, no one needing anything from her yet. Just her and the road and the particular quiet of a morning that hadn't been complicated yet. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat. "Nathaniel, good morning." She glanced at it. 2 words. He had not texted her good morning, and she tried to remember and couldn't. Months, possibly longer, she put the phone face down and drove. She would answer later. She just needed the 22 minutes first. Elliot was already at the office when she arrived, which was not unusual because Elliot was always at the office when she arrived, and she had begun to suspect he either lived there or didn't sleep. "Grant meeting at 9, he said without looking up from his desk as she passed his door. Marcus from the city council office called. They want to add agenda items. I said we'd circle back. Tell Marcus we'll give him 10 minutes at the end, she said. Already did. He looked up, then briefly. You look tired. Good morning to you too, Elliot. I'm not being rude, I'm being observant. He leaned back in his chair. There's a difference. She stopped in the doorway. I'm fine. Okay, he said, easy, no push. Coffee's fresh. She poured herself a cup and sat at her desk and opened her laptop and looked at the screen for a full minute without reading anything on it. Then she picked up her phone and typed back, "Good morning," and set it down again. It was a small thing. It was only 2 words. And yet she sat there and examined how it felt to send them and found nothing warm. Nothing hopeful. Just the baseline courtesies of someone who was not yet ready to be unkind. That scared her more than anger would have. The 9 o'clock Grant meeting ran long, the way every meeting ran long when you had 7 people who all cared deeply and disagreed productively. And by the time they finished it was nearly 11, and Amelia had 3 voicemails she hadn't listened to, and a lunch she'd forgotten she'd scheduled. The lunch was with her older sister Diana. Diana Hartwell was 41, divorced, a high school English teacher in Cambridge. And the only person in Amelia's life who had been saying, leave him for approximately 2 years with the patient persistence of someone who knew they were right and was willing to wait. They met at a Thai place on Newbury Street that Diana had chosen because, in her words, you need to be that doesn't have a dress code when we have this conversation. He texted you good morning, Diana said before Amelia had finished unwrapping her chopsticks. How do you, 'cause you have the face you make when something's happened that you don't know how to feel about. Diana pointed at her. That face. Right there. I don't have a face, Amelia. You have so many faces, you're very expressive. It's one of your best qualities. Diana picked up her menu. What did the text say, good morning? Diana lowered the menu. That's it? That's it. And you're what? Moved by this? I didn't say I was moved. You drove 20 minutes to meet me for lunch instead of eating at your desk like you normally do, which means something happened and you need to say it out loud to someone who isn't going to be polite about it. Diana set the menu down. So say it. Amelia was quiet for a moment. Then she said he came home early yesterday. He told me he knew about Harrison High. He said he was sorry, not that I was upset. That he'd left me alone in our relationship. Diana looked at her. He said that? He said that. Okay. A pause. How did it feel? Like she stopped. Started again, like someone handing you back something you lost a long time ago. And you're glad to have it back. But you've already rearranged everything to work without it. And you don't know if there's still a place for it. Diana was quiet for a moment, which was unusual for Diana. Do you still love him? She asked. Amelia looked at the table. I never stopped. That's not the same as wanting to go back. I know. It's also not the same as being ready to go forward. Diana, I'm not telling you what to do, her sister said. I'm just saying the fact that he finally saw something you'd been showing him for 3 years doesn't mean you owe him the chance to do better. Some people wake up too late, a beat, but some people don't. Amelia looked up. Which one is he? I don't know, Diana said honestly. That's the thing you have to figure out. Nathaniel was not a man who sat with uncertainty. He had built his entire professional life on the premise that uncertainty was a problem to be identified, analyzed, and resolved that clarity was always achievable if you worked hard enough and moved fast enough and never stopped long enough to let the doubt get comfortable. He sat with uncertainty for 7 days after their kitchen conversation, and it nearly drove him to pieces. He called Marcus into his office on a Thursday morning and said, "Clear my afternoon." Marcus, who had worked for him for 6 years and had never once heard him say those words, looked up. Everything? Everything. You have the Eastbridge call at 3. Reschedule it. Marcus wrote something down. Then carefully, is everything all right? No, Nathaniel said, which was also something he had never said to Marcus in 6 years. Marcus left without another word. He was a very perceptive man. Nathaniel sat at his desk with his phone in his hand and looked at the last text exchange he and Amelia had. Good morning and good morning back, and then nothing for 4 days because he hadn't known what to say next, and she hadn't volunteered anything, and the silence had stretched between them like a held breath. He typed, "Can we have dinner tonight? Not a restaurant." "I'll cook." He stared at it for a long time. He sent it. Her response came 11 minutes later. "Okay, one word." But she'd said yes. He went to the grocery store himself, which he hadn't done in 2 years, and stood in the produce section for a bewildering amount of time, before calling his friend Daniel, the only married man he trusted, and saying, with no preamble, "I've been an idiot." "Yeah," Daniel said, "I know. How long have you known?" Nathaniel. A pause. "Since year 1. He stood among the tomatoes and absorbed that. "Why didn't you say something?" "I did," Daniel said. "You weren't listening. Which is kind of the whole issue, my friend." She came home at 7. The apartment smelled like something cooking. Real cooking, not takeout, not the coffee and toast that had been his default contributions to domestic life for 3 years. She stopped just inside the door. Nathaniel appeared from the kitchen. He was wearing a regular shirt with the sleeves rolled up and a dish towel over his shoulder, and he looked, she thought, more like a person than she'd seen him look in a long time. "Less armored, less curated pasta," he said. "I watched 4 videos. "I don't know how it'll be." She looked at him. "You watched 4 videos. The first one was from 2011, and I think the chef was wrong about something fundamental, so I found a second one to check." He went back into the kitchen. "Come sit." She sat at the counter. She watched him move around their kitchen, with the particular focused uncertainty of someone attempting something genuinely unfamiliar, and she felt something shift in her chest that she didn't immediately name. "You don't have to do this," she said. "I know." He was stirring something. Not looking at her. "That's why I'm doing it, Nathaniel. I'm not trying to fix it with pasta," he said. "I know pasta doesn't fix 3 years. I just needed..." He stopped, set the spoon down, turned around. "I needed to do one thing today that was for you and not for me. Even if it's a small thing, especially if it's a small thing." She looked at him across the counter. "You said I lost you every day I chose not to see you," he said. "I figured seeing you every day from now on has to start somewhere." The kitchen was quiet. Outside, a car went past. She said, "The pasta better be good." Something in his shoulders came down, not relief exactly. More like the exhale at the end of something very long. "It might be terrible," he admitted. "Then we'll order pizza," she said. It was not forgiveness. She knew it and he knew it, and neither of them pretended otherwise. But it was something of first brick, a tentative step onto ground that might or might not hold weight. They ate pasta. It was against all odds quite good. He had clearly studied those 4 videos with the same focused intensity he brought to acquisition strategy, which should not have been funny but was, slightly. She told him about the grant meeting. He asked questions, real questions, follow-up questions, the kind that meant he'd actually heard her previous answer. It felt strange. It felt like speaking a language she'd known once and had begun to forget. She didn't let herself hope too much. She was watching. She was waiting to see what he'd do when it got inconvenient. That was the test, not the pasta. What he did that first week was show up, not grandly. Not with gestures designed to impress. He showed up the way a man shows up when he is finally too late, possibly, but finally understood that showing up is the entire point. He was home for dinner on 4 out of 5 weeknights. On the 5th he called at 6 to say he'd be late, which he had not done in 3 years, and asked if she'd eaten already. She had. He said, "Okay, I'll grab something," and she heard in that okay the careful absence of expectation, and it registered. He remembered a meeting she mentioned on Monday and asked how it went on Wednesday. He texted not every day, not performatively, but occasionally, when he thought of something. "That grant you mentioned, the federal one. Marcus found an article you might want." With a link. A real link, relevant, specific. She showed it to Elliot, who raised both eyebrows. "Your guy found that?" Elliot said. "Don't make it a thing," she said. "I'm not making it a thing." He was quiet for a moment. "It's a good article. I know, he's trying, Elliot." I know what you're doing," she said. "Thank you." "Don't." He held up both hands, noted a beat. "For what it's worth." "It's not worth anything right now." "Fair," he said, and went back to his work, and she loved him slightly for not finishing the sentence. 3 weeks in, Nathaniel did something that had nothing to do with her, and everything to do with who he was trying to become. He pulled the Westfield project. Not the whole development, the residential component, the condominiums that would have displaced the current tenants of the block, replaced what was affordable with what was not. He restructured the deal. It cost him money, not a catastrophic amount, but real money, the kind that his CFO noticed and his board asked about. "You're leaving margin on the table," his CFO said in the Tuesday meeting, flat and factual. "Yes," Nathaniel said. "The residential component was 40% of projected." "I know what it was." "Then can you explain?" "There are 112 families in that building," he said. "They've been there an average of 11 years. The commercial component still generates profit." He looked around the table. "We'll be fine." The meeting moved on. Nobody argued with him. He was the one with his name on the building, but he felt their questions like weather, and he let them pass. He didn't tell Amelia. He didn't want credit for it. He didn't want it to be a thing he did for her. He wanted it to be a thing he did, because he'd finally started looking at the world the way she'd been looking at it all along. He told Daniel, because Daniel wouldn't make it precious. 112 families, Daniel said. "Since when do you count families?" "Since recently," Nathaniel said. "She's changing you." "No," Nathaniel said. "She showed me what I should have already been." "That's different." Daniel was quiet for a moment. "You love her." "I always did." "No," Daniel said, "you wanted her." "That's not the same thing. What you're describing now, that's love." Nathaniel didn't argue. He sat with it. It felt accurate in a way that was uncomfortable and necessary in equal measure. She found out about the Westfield restructure from a city planning newsletter she read on a Thursday morning at her desk. She read the paragraph 3 times. Then she sat very still for a moment. Then she texted him, "I read about Westfield." He responded within a minute, which was new. "Yeah." She typed, "You didn't tell me. It wasn't for you to know about." It was just the right thing. She set the phone down. Picked it up. Set it down again. Elliot appeared in her doorway. She turned the phone face down. "You have a face again," he said. "I have a complicated life," she said. "Anything I can do?" She looked at him, this man who had come into her life at the exact right moment, who had shown her what it looked like to be simply, consistently seen, who had never asked anything from her except her best work and given the same in return. She felt for him a gratitude so particular and so real that it was hard to hold. "You've already done it," she said. He looked at her. Then he nodded, once, and didn't ask what she meant, and she was grateful for that too. The first real argument happened on a Saturday. It wasn't about anything important. It was about a dinner party Daniel and his wife Priya were having people over, and Nathaniel had RSVP'd yes without asking her, which he'd done 100 times before, but this time she said something. "You confirmed for both of us without checking," she said. He blinked. "It's Daniel. You like Daniel." She stopped. "Nathaniel, I might have had plans. You don't know because you didn't ask." "Did you have plans? That is not the point." He was quiet for a moment. She watched him visibly resist the urge to argue the logic of it, to point out that no, she hadn't had plans, that it was just Daniel's dinner. She watched him close his mouth on that sentence before it came out. "You're right," he said instead. "I should have checked." She stared at him. "I should have checked," he repeated, steadier. "It was a habit, not a good one. I'm sorry." She didn't know what to do with that. She'd prepared for the argument, not the concession. The concession landed in the middle of her chest and sat there, warm and awkward and real. "I don't have plans," she said after a beat. "The dinner is fine." "Okay, but next time ask." "Next time I'll ask," he said. "And then, can I ask you something right now?" "What?" "What do you want to bring to dinner? What do you want to contribute? Because I don't actually know what you like to bring to things." She looked at him. 3 years, and this was the first time he'd asked her that. "Wine," she said. "I like to bring wine. Something interesting, not the obvious choice." "Tell me what to look for," he said. "I'll get it." She told him. He wrote it down. Not on his phone, he wrote it in the small notebook he'd started keeping, which she'd noticed but hadn't commented on, the one that appeared to contain things he didn't want to forget anymore. She watched him write and felt the complicated, unresolved, entirely genuine feeling of loving someone you hadn't yet decided to trust again. Priya cornered her in the kitchen at Daniel and Priya's dinner that Saturday, under the pretext of helping with dessert. "He's different," Priya said, not looking at her, slicing cake. "Priya, I've known Nathaniel for 4 years. That man in there right now asking Daniel about your grant program," she paused. "I have never heard him ask about anyone's work unless it was relevant to a deal." "People change," Amelia said carefully. "Some do." Priya looked at her then. "Are you letting yourself believe it?" "I'm watching," Amelia said. "That's all I can do right now." "That's wise," Priya said. "Just don't watch so carefully you forget to feel." She carried the cake out. Amelia stood alone in the kitchen for a moment, holding 2 dessert plates, thinking about that. Don't watch so carefully you forget to feel. She'd gotten so good at watching, at measuring, at protecting. She had built, without realizing it, a very beautiful and very functional wall, and she had been living on her side of it, safe and whole and entirely alone. The question was not whether Nathaniel had changed. The question was whether she was brave enough to find out. She called Diana on the way home. "Quick question," she said without preamble. "Go ahead," Diana said. "When does trusting someone stop being hope and start being stupidity?" A long pause. "That depends entirely on whether the person has given you new evidence or just new promises." "New evidence. Then it's hope," Diana said. "Terrifying, reasonable, mature hope." "The worst kind. That's not helpful." "Sure it is." "You already knew the answer. You were just checking." She hung up. In the back of the car Nathaniel was driving, his hands easy on the wheel. She looked at the city moving past and thought, Diana's right. I already know. The question now was what to do with knowing. The twist arrived on a Tuesday morning, as most things that rearranged Amelia Hartwell's life tended to do. She was at her desk reviewing a program budget when her phone rang. Not Nathaniel, Not Diana, but a number she didn't recognize with a New York area code. She almost let it go to voicemail. She didn't. Hartwell? Speaking. My name is Catherine Webb. I'm with the Bauer Foundation. We've been following the work at the Hartwell Center, the Harrison High program in particular, and we're interested in a conversation about significant expansion funding. Amelia set down her pen. How significant? 5-year grant. Multi-city expansion, Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago. We're talking about building a national model, a beat. We'd like you to come to New York for a meeting, as the architect of the program. The air in the room changed. This was the kind of call she had spent her entire career trying to earn. Not just more funding for one program, a platform. A national platform. Everything she'd worked toward, offered in a phone call on a Tuesday morning. When, she said, we're flexible, but we'd like to move quickly. Within the month, if possible. I'll need to coordinate with my team. Of course. But Ms. Hartwell, the grant is structured around leadership continuity. We'd be funding you, your vision, wherever that takes you. She understood what that meant. It meant if you leave the Hartwell Center, the grant goes with you. It meant choices she hadn't expected to have to make yet. She got off the phone and sat very still for a long time. Then she walked to Elliot's office. He looked up. Read her face. Sat back. Tell me, he said. She told him all of it. The whole call, every word. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, this is everything you've been building toward. I know, this is before you got here. Before me, before this office. This is what you came to this field to do. I know, Elliot. So what's the problem? She looked at him. He already knew the answer. She could see it in his expression. That careful, attentive steadiness she had come to rely on without meaning to. There's no problem, she said. You're wondering whether you tell him first. She didn't answer. Amelia, he leaned forward. The question of whether to tell Nathaniel first, that's not a grant question. That's a relationship question. Those are two different decisions. I know. And you've been making every hard decision alone for 3 years, he said quietly. Maybe this is the first one you don't have to. She went back to her office. She sat down. She looked at her phone. She called Nathaniel. He answered on the second ring. Hey, something happened, she said. Something good, big. I need to tell you about it. A pause. She heard him. In the background, the specific sound of him setting something down, turning toward the phone, toward her, with his full attention. I'm listening, he said. Not what is it with half a mind on something else. Not can it wait until tonight. I'm listening. She took a breath. She told him. And he listened, really listened, asking the right questions, saying that's enormous in exactly the tone she needed to hear it said in, saying what do you want to do instead of what should we do, and she felt, for the first time in a very long time, the specific relief of being known. Not completely, not yet, not without the complicated history still sitting between them like furniture they hadn't figured out where to put. But the direction of it, the shape of what it could be, if they did the work. She was not ready to say she trusted him, but she was no longer ready to say she didn't. The New York meeting was scheduled for a Thursday. Amelia told Nathaniel on Monday. She sat across from him at dinner, real dinner, together, which had become a thing again, careful and new and still slightly fragile at the edges, and she laid it out. The Bauer Foundation, the 5-year grant, Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago. The national model, the part where the funding followed her, not the organization. She watched his face while she talked. He didn't reach for his phone. He didn't glance at the window. He sat with both hands around his coffee cup and looked at her and listened to every word, and when she finished, he said, "When do you leave?" "Thursday morning. Back Friday night. Do you want me to come?" She hadn't expected that. She sat with it for a moment. "It's a professional meeting." "I know," he said. "I'm not asking to sit in the room. I'm asking if you want someone there. At the hotel." When it's over. Something moved through her chest, quiet and complicated. I'll be okay, she said. I know you will, he said. You've been okay alone for a long time. That's not what I asked. She looked at him across the table. This man who had learned somehow, in the space of a few weeks, to ask the question underneath the question. Let me go alone this time, she said. But thank you for asking. He nodded. He didn't push. He refilled her water glass and asked what she thought the Foundation's real priorities were. And she talked through it, and he listened, and she noticed she was always noticing now. Cataloging. Comparing present Nathaniel to past Nathaniel with the careful attention of someone who had been burned and was not yet ready to stop watching for smoke. But there was no smoke, not tonight. She went to bed that night with the grant on her mind, and something else underneath it, something she wasn't ready to name yet, warm and cautious and alive. She took the 7 a.m. train to New York. Nathaniel drove her to South Station. He carried her bag to the platform, just her overnight bag. She'd packed light and stood with her at the gate and said, "You built this. Whatever happens in that room, remember you built it." She looked up at him. "Not me," he said, "not luck. You." She wanted to say something and didn't have the words, which was unusual for her. So she said, "I'll call you when I'm done." And he said, "I'll answer." And the train doors opened and she walked through them. She found her seat. She put in her earbuds. She looked out the window as the city moved away and thought about what he'd said. You built this. She had built it. Piece by piece, year by year, before him and during him and increasingly, in the last months, in spite of the version of herself she'd been when she was with him. The version that had made herself smaller. The version that had accommodated and compressed and waited. She had built this in the margins of a life that hadn't been giving her enough room. The thought arrived quietly, without bitterness. Imagine what she could build now. Catherine Webb was exactly what Amelia had expected, precise, warm, in the particular way of people who were very good at their jobs. The kind of woman who asked a question and actually waited for the full answer before forming a response. They met in a conference room on the 14th floor with 2 other Foundation officers and a program director named James who had built a similar model in Seattle 8 years ago and wanted to talk about everything he'd gotten wrong first. Amelia liked him immediately. The meeting ran 3 hours. At the end of it, Catherine slid a folder across the table. "We don't usually do this on a first conversation," she said. "But we've been watching your work for 18 months, and we're not uncertain. This is a preliminary offer. Take 2 weeks. Look it over with whoever you need to look it over with, and come back to us." Amelia opened the folder. She read the first page. She closed it very carefully. "Thank you," she said, in a voice she was proud of for being completely steady. She called Elliot from the lobby before she'd even put her coat on. "How'd it go?" he answered. "They gave me a preliminary offer," she said. "A beat. And it's significant, Elliot. How significant?" She told him the number. The silence on his end lasted long enough that she checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. "Elliot. I'm here," he said. "I'm just Amelia. I know. That changes everything." "I know," she said again. And this time her voice did something she hadn't expected. A slight unsteadiness. Just for a second. Because it was real now. It wasn't a phone call anymore. It was a folder in her hand, and a number on a page, and a decision she was going to have to make about what kind of life she was building and who she was building it with. "Go home," Elliot said quietly. "Call whoever you need to call. This is a good thing. Let it be a good thing." She took a breath. "Yeah," she said. She hung up. She stood in the lobby for one more moment. Then she called Nathaniel. He answered before the second ring. "Tell me," he said. She was back in Boston by 8 that night. Nathaniel was home when she got there. Not obviously waiting, he was at his desk, working genuinely, but he looked up when she came through the door and he was on his feet before she'd gotten her coat off. "How are you?" he said. Not "how did it go?" Not "what happened?" "How are you?" She stopped, sat down on the couch and let the overnight bag fall. A lot. He sat across from her, close but not assuming. Tell me. She told him everything. The meeting, Catherine Webb, James from Seattle, the 3 hours, the folder. She told him the number, and watched his face, and saw not competitive calculation but something that looked genuinely, cleanly like pride. Amelia, he said. It's a big decision. It's the right decision, he said. For you, I know it is. I haven't decided yet, I know. I'm just stopped. Recalibrated. I don't want to be a reason you hesitate. If there's any part of this you're thinking about slowly, because of us. Nathaniel, finish. He leaned forward. I spent 3 years making you small. I'm not doing that anymore. Not even by accident. If this is what you want, I want you to take it with everything you have. She looked at him for a long time. I need 2 weeks to think, she said. Take 2 weeks, he said. Take more if you need it. And I need you to not ask me about it every day. He almost smiled. I can do that. I'll bring it up when I'm ready. Okay? She looked at him. You've gotten better at okay. I've been practicing, he said. And there it was, the almost smile breaking through, the one she had fallen in love with 3 years ago in a fundraising venue when he'd handed her a business card and she'd made him work for it. She felt something she had been carefully not feeling for weeks, because feeling it too soon was dangerous, because she'd been burned on hope before. She felt it anyway, just for a second, just enough to know it was still there. She looked away first. I'm tired, she said. Go to bed, he said. I'll be up later, she went. He stayed, and the apartment held them both in their separate quiet, in the careful new architecture of something being rebuilt, one small true thing at a time. The 2 weeks passed the way significant time always passes, too slowly when you were inside it, too fast when you looked back. Amelia worked. She ran the Harrison High Spring Session, which was the most ambitious they'd done yet. 63 kids over 6 weeks, and she threw herself into it with everything she had, because the work was the clearest thing in her life, and always had been. She had lunch with Diana, who read the preliminary offer with her glasses on, and said nothing for a full minute, and then said, take it. I have an Amelia. Take it. This is what you've been building toward since you were 23 years old. Take it. It's complicated. Most things worth doing are. Diana took off her glasses. Can I ask you something and you'll answer honestly? When have I not? Is the thing making it complicated the job or Nathaniel? A pause. Both. Then separate them. What do you want professionally with none of the rest of it? She knew the answer. She'd known it since she'd opened the folder in that conference room and felt the number land in her chest like a key turning. I want it, she said. Then that decision is made, Diana said. Now figure out the other one. The other one wasn't ready to be figured out. Not yet. What was happening with Nathaniel was real. She believed that. She was letting herself believe that, but it was young and untested, and she knew too well how easy it was to be present when everything was going well. When the dinners were good and the conversations were interesting, and nobody was under real pressure yet. She was waiting for the pressure. It came on a Wednesday, 3 weeks after New York, from a direction she hadn't expected. She was at the office when Marcus called. Not Nathaniel, Marcus, which meant something was happening and Nathaniel was too busy to call himself, which meant... He's fine, Marcus said immediately, as if he'd known that would be her first thought. I'm sorry to call you directly. He asked me not to, actually. But I thought you should know. Know what? The Eastbridge deal collapsed this morning. 3 years of work. The other party walked. There are legal complications I can't go into detail, but it's significant. He's been in meetings since 7 a.m., and I don't think he's eaten anything. A pause. He's not going to call you. He's going to handle it alone because that's what he does. I just thought someone should. Marcus, thank you. She hung up. She sat at her desk. She thought about the version of Nathaniel she had known for 3 years, the one who disappeared into work when things got hard, who handled everything alone, who came home at 10:30, looking like he'd been through something and deflected every question about it. She thought about whether this was that version coming back, or whether it was simply a hard day, a genuinely terrible day. And maybe what he needed wasn't to be left alone with it the way he'd always said he wanted. She told Elliot she was leaving early. "Is everything okay?" Elliot asked. "I don't know yet," she said honestly, and left. She brought food. Not from anywhere fancy, from the deli 2 blocks from his office. The one she knew he liked but never went to because it required leaving the building, which, on a day like today, he would not have done. She texted Marcus, "I'm downstairs. Don't tell him." Marcus responded, "Lobby elevator, 32nd floor. I'll clear 5 minutes." She went up. Nathaniel's office was glass-walled, and she could see him through it before she reached the door on the phone. Jacket off, tie loosened, specific posture of someone holding something very heavy and trying not to show it. 2 associates were at the conference table behind him, laptops open. Nobody looked like they'd stopped to breathe recently. She knocked. He turned, saw her. Something happened in his face that he didn't manage quickly enough, a flicker of something raw, something that was almost relief before it got controlled, and then he said something into the phone and held up one finger and walked to the door. "You didn't have to," he started. "I brought food," she said. She held up the bag. "From the deli. I got you the turkey one with the good mustard because you never go there when things are bad, even though it's what you actually want." He looked at the bag, he looked at her. Something in his jaw moved. "How did you know?" he said. "Me. I told him not to." "I know," she said. "That's why I'm glad he did." He stood in the doorway and looked at her, and she could see him doing the thing he always did, building the wall, deploying the "I'm fine," preparing the deflection, and she watched him choose, visibly, effortfully, not to. "It's bad," he said. Low. 3 years of work and the whole thing went sideways this morning, and I don't know yet what the fallout is going to look like." "Okay," she said, "I can't leave." "I'm not asking you to leave," she said. "I brought you lunch. Eat something. Go back to work." "I'll be home tonight, Amelia." "You don't have to do it alone," she said. "That's all. You don't have to do it alone, just because you used to." He was quiet for a moment. His throat moved. "Thank you," he said, and the 2 words came out different from how he usually said them, slower, more from the center of something. She handed him the bag. "Call me if it gets worse." "I will." She turned to go. She was 3 steps away when he said, "Hey." She turned back. "I see you," he said. "I know I owe you a lot more than a sentence. But I see you." She stood there for a second, felt the weight of those 3 words, "I see you," and what it had taken 3 years and an implosion and a slowly rebuilding man to say them. "I know," she said. And she left, and she was proud of herself for not looking back, even though she wanted to. He came home at 11. She was awake. She'd known he would be late. She hadn't tried to wait up in the old way, the anxious way, the "I'll just stay up until he's home" way that had slowly hollowed her out over 3 years. She was reading, legitimately reading, in bed, and she heard him come in and move through the apartment with the specific exhausted quiet of someone running on empty. He appeared in the bedroom doorway. She looked up. "How bad?" she asked. "Survivable," he said. "Not comfortable, but survivable. Come to bed." He got ready in the dark, moving quietly, and she went back to her book and didn't make it a moment, didn't perform concern or distance or anything at all. Just let him be tired in the same space as her. He was asleep in 7 minutes. She knew because she was counting, the way she used to count other things, not obsessively, just marking. She put her book down. She lay in the dark and thought, this is the thing you don't know at the beginning. It's not the big gestures. It's this. Whether someone can come home broken and you can let them be broken, and neither of you has to perform anything. She had not been able to do that with the old Nathaniel. The old Nathaniel hadn't let her in on his broken days. This one had, quietly, imperfectly, through a phone call he'd tried to prevent, but still. He'd let her in. She closed her eyes. She slept. In the morning he made breakfast, not elaborately. eggs and toast, coffee, orange juice. He had it on the table when she came out, and he handed her a cup and said, "I want to talk about the Bauer Foundation." She looked at him over the rim. "I thought you were giving me space on that." "I am. I want to say one thing, and then I'll give you space again." "One thing. Take it," he said. "Whatever you're worried about on my end, don't factor me in as a limitation. I'm asking you to factor me in as a person who wants to watch you build something national." "That's different." She set her cup down. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "I know I haven't earned that statement yet. I know you're watching to see if I mean it. But I need you to hear it anyway. I'm not going anywhere. Not because you need me to stay, because I want to." She looked at him for a long time. "If I take this," she said, slowly, "there will be travel. New York, Philadelphia, Chicago. Long weeks. I won't always be here for dinner." "I know. And I won't be making my life smaller to fit yours anymore." "I know that too. I need you to actually know it, Nathaniel. Not agree with it right now because things are good. Know it for the weeks it's inconvenient and the trips run long, and I'm tired and stressed and not easy to be around." "I'm not always easy to be around either," he said. "Ask last night. Last night you let me in," she said. "That's the bar, not perfect. Just let me in." He was quiet. "Then I can do that, can you?" "I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it," he said. "Or trying to. However long you give me." She picked up her cup, took a drink, set it down. "I'm going to call Catherine Webb today," she said. Something lit in his eyes. "Yeah, Amelia." "Don't make it a big thing," she said. "Let me eat my eggs first." He laughed. A real one. The one she'd married herself to 3 years ago in a room full of strangers when she should have known she was in trouble. She felt it land the same way it always had in the base of her chest, like a bell struck true. She ate her eggs. He drank his coffee. They talked about nothing in particular. Normal conversation, the kind that felt easy, the kind she had forgotten they were capable of. It was not resolution. It was not the end of the complicated history between them or the wall she'd built, or the trust she hadn't yet fully given back. But it was morning. It was breakfast. It was two people choosing for today to be in the same room and mean it. That was enough. For now, that was exactly enough. She called Catherine Webb at 10:15 from her office, with the door closed. Elliot was at his desk outside her glass wall. She could see him through it, head bent over something, not watching, but present the way he was always present, the steady background hum of someone you trusted without having to think about it. "Miss Hartwell," Catherine said warmly, "I've been hoping to hear from you." "I've made my decision," Amelia said. A pause, and "I want to do this," she said. "I want to build this." She heard it in Catherine's response, the particular exhale of someone who'd been quietly hoping for a specific answer. "I'm very glad to hear it. When can you come back to New York? We'd like to start the formal conversations." "Next week," Amelia said. "I'll bring my program director." "Perfect. We'll set it up." She hung up. She sat for a second. Then she opened her door. Elliot looked up. "We're going to New York next week," she said. He stared at her. "You took it, Amelia. You built this program with me," she said. "You're not staying behind." He was on his feet. She had never seen Elliot Monroe at a loss for words. He stood there for a full 3 seconds, which was, for him, practically a geological era. "I don't know what to say," he said. "Say you'll be on the 7 a.m. train." "I'll be on the 7 a.m. train," he said. And then quieter, "Thank you." "Thank you," she said back, and meant it differently and fully and entirely. She didn't tell Nathaniel until that evening. She wanted to hold it for a few hours, feel it as her own thing first, before it became a shared thing. She had spent 3 years not having things of her own, and she was still learning, still practicing, the art of owning her own moments before releasing them. When she did tell him over the dinner he'd made again, he'd apparently decided this was his contribution now, and she was not going to argue. His face did what she'd watched it, learning to do. It opened. "You took it," he said. I took it. When do you start? Formally 60 days, but the groundwork starts now. Okay. He was smiling, actually smiling, with nothing behind it except exactly what it looked like. Okay, we figure it out. I need an office in New York eventually, she said. Probably a small apartment, month to month at first. I have contacts in New York, he said immediately. I'll make some calls. Whatever you need. She looked at him. You're not going to make this complicated. I was going to ask if you'd want me to visit sometimes, he said. When it works for you. If you wanted. She thought about it. Genuinely thought about it. Not as a test, not as a move in a larger game, just as a real question about what she wanted. Yes, she said, I'd want that. Then I'll visit, he said. When it works, simple, clean, no conditions, no scorekeeping, no performance. She picked up her fork. He picked up his. They ate dinner, while the city did what it always did outside their window, moved and hummed, and carried its million ordinary lives forward, and neither of them said anything else about the future, because the future was there. Present in the room, and it didn't need to be named yet. What it needed was exactly what they were doing, showing up. One day, one dinner, one honest choice at a time. 3 days later, Nathaniel got a call that changed everything. He took it at his desk at 8 in the morning, Marcus at the door, with an expression that said, "This is important," before he'd even opened his mouth. There's a woman on the line, Marcus said. She says her name is Helen Brooks. She says she's your mother. Nathaniel went absolutely still. His mother, who he had not spoken to in 11 years. Who lived in a small town in western Massachusetts that he hadn't returned to since the day he'd left for college, with a single bag and a scholarship and a determination never to be the kind of man his father had been. Put her through, he said. His voice was even. His hands were not. Marcus closed the door. He picked up the phone. "Hello, Mom," he said. The silence on the other end lasted exactly long enough to tell him something was wrong. And then his mother's voice, older than he remembered it, thinner, said, "Your father had a heart attack, Nathaniel, last night. He's asking for you." He sat in his chair and looked at the wall and felt 11 years collapse into a single second. He's alive. A breath. I know what I'm asking. I know what he was. I'm not asking you to forgive him. I'm just broke. Only slightly, then steadied. He's asking for you. Nathaniel set down the phone after the call ended. He sat there for 3 minutes. Then he picked up his phone and called Amelia. She answered on the second ring. "My father had a heart attack," he said. "I need to go to Hadley today." A pause. Not a long one. "I'll pack a bag," she said. "Amelia, you don't have to." Nathaniel. Her voice was steady, warm, certain. "Do you want to go alone?" He looked at the wall. He thought about the 11 years. The empty space where a family should have been. The man in a hospital bed who had taught him, by terrible example, everything about how not to love someone. "No," he said, "I don't want to go alone." "Then I'll pack a bag," she said. "Pick me up in an hour." The drive to Hadley took 90 minutes. Amelia was in the passenger seat with her hands in her lap and her eyes forward, and Nathaniel drove the way he always drove when something was happening inside him that he hadn't processed yet, too controlled, too precise. The car staying exactly at the speed limit in a way that had nothing to do with caution and everything to do with the need to manage at least one thing when everything else felt loose. She didn't fill the silence. She had learned in the last weeks that there was a difference between a silence that needed filling and a silence that needed company. This one needed company. 40 minutes in, somewhere past Worcester, he said. He used to leave for weeks. She didn't turn her head, she just listened. "When I was a kid." He'd be there and then he wouldn't. No explanation going or coming back. "My mother would just adjust, reset the table for 3 instead of 4. Re-explain to me and my sister why Dad was traveling for work." A pause. "He wasn't traveling for work, I know," she said softly. She knew too. She stayed anyway. His jaw tightened. I spent my whole life not understanding that. Not understanding how she could know and stay. And now? He was quiet for a long time. Now I think he said I spent so long being terrified of becoming him that I didn't notice I'd become a different version of the same thing. Present in the room. Gone everywhere else. She turned and looked at him then. He was looking at the road. You're not him, she said. I'm not, he agreed. But I understand him better than I wanted to. And I don't know how I feel about that. She reached over and put her hand on his arm. Not a gesture of romance, just contact. Just, I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere, and you don't have to hold this alone. He didn't say anything, but his shoulders came down a fraction of an inch. They drove the rest of the way like that, her hand on his arm, the highway moving under them, the silence between them warm instead of empty, for what felt like the first time in a very long time. The hospital in Hadley was small and quiet and smelled the way all hospitals smelled, like something being carefully kept at bay. Helen Brooks was waiting in the family area outside the cardiac unit, a woman of 63 who looked, to Amelia's eyes, like she had spent a lifetime being carefully, quietly strong in a way that had cost her considerably. She was small and upright, and she had Nathaniel's eyes, or rather Nathaniel had hers, that same precise focus quality. Except in his mother, they had a softness in them that Nathaniel was only now beginning to grow into. She stood when she saw him, Nathaniel. He crossed the room and hugged her. Amelia watched it happen, watched him fold his tall frame around this small woman, and saw something she hadn't expected. He held on, not briefly, not performatively, he held on. Helen pulled back first. She looked at him the way mothers look at sons they haven't seen in 11 years, taking inventory, looking for damage, measuring the distance between who he was and who she'd hoped he'd become. Whatever she found seemed to satisfy something. She exhaled. This is Amelia, Nathaniel said. Helen turned, looked at her. Amelia braced for assessment, for the complicated weight of being the girlfriend brought to a family crisis, but what she got instead was Helen taking both her hands and squeezing them and saying, "He told me about you." Last Christmas, he called. Amelia looked at Nathaniel. He was looking at the floor. He calls every Christmas, Helen said simply. He thinks I don't know how hard it is for him. I know, she released Amelia's hands. Your father is awake, she said to Nathaniel. He's asking for you. You don't have to go in, I know, but you will. It wasn't a question. Yeah, he said, I will. Amelia waited with Helen. They sat in the family area with bad coffee and the particular suspended time quality of hospital waiting, and Helen asked about Amelia's work with the directness of someone who had learned not to waste words. And Amelia told her about the Bauer Foundation grant, and Helen listened with the same focused quality her son had recently begun to practice. And Amelia thought, so that's where it comes from. The capacity was always there. He just had to learn to use it. He was different with his father around, Helen said after a pause. Quieter, more careful. Robert, his father, Robert was the kind of man who could make you feel like the most important person in the room, and also like you weren't quite measuring up. At the same time, it was a particular skill. That sounds exhausting, Amelia said. It was, Helen said, for all of us. Nathaniel learned early that the safest thing was to focus. Work hard. Be good at things. Stop wanting things that could be taken away. She looked at her coffee cup. He stopped wanting things from people. People were unreliable. Success wasn't. Amelia sat with that until you, Helen said. He wanted things from me, Amelia said carefully. He just didn't know how to be present for them. No, Helen agreed. He wouldn't have. Nobody taught him. A long pause. I should have. That's my piece of it, Mrs. Brooks. Helen, you survived something hard. You did what you could. So did you, Helen said, and looked at her with something direct and clear. And you're still here. That tells me something about what my son is worth trying for. Amelia didn't answer. She just looked at the door to the cardiac unit and thought about the man on the other side of it, and what he was learning right now, about what it cost to leave people alone. Nathaniel was in the room for 45 minutes. He came out looking like he'd aged something intangible, not older in his face, but deeper behind the eyes, like the ground level had shifted. He said goodbye to his mother. He made her promise to call if anything changed. He told her, and this landed on Amelia's chest with a particular weight, I'm not going to disappear again. I know I won't. Helen looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached up and touched his face, briefly. The way you touch something you're grateful still exists, and said, I know. In the car going home, he drove differently, looser. The control was still there, but it wasn't rigid anymore. What did he say? Amelia asked when she felt the time was right. He said he was sorry, Nathaniel said, which I didn't expect. He's not built for apology. It came out wrong, like something he'd been holding a long time, and it had gotten bent out of shape. Did you believe him? I believed he meant it, Nathaniel said. Whether meaning it is enough, I don't know yet. But he's 70 years old, and he nearly died last night, and he asked for me. Whatever he is, whatever he did, his voice went quiet. He asked for me. What did you say to him? Nathaniel was quiet for a long time. I told him I was building something, he said, with someone worth building with. And I didn't want to become the kind of man who had to wait until he was dying to say the things that mattered. Amelia looked out the window. She felt the back of her eyes go warm, and she held it, pressed it down, because she wasn't ready to cry yet. Not here. That was the right thing to say, she said. It was the true thing, he said. That's all I had. They stopped for food on the way back, a diner off the highway, the kind with laminated menus and coffee that had been sitting since morning. They took a booth in the back and ordered breakfast food at 3 in the afternoon because neither of them had eaten and the situation called for pancakes. She watched him across the table and thought about Helen Brooks telling her he calls every Christmas. Nathaniel, who had presented himself as a man entirely self-sufficient, entirely forward-facing, who spoke about his family in the past tense, calling his mother every Christmas. Holding on to something, even while pretending not to need it. You call her every Christmas, she said. He looked up. She told you she did. He was quiet for a moment. I didn't want to lose her completely. I didn't know how to go back. You kept one line open, she said. I kept one line open, he agreed. It seemed like the least I could do. She thought about that. About the man who had been so afraid of needing things from people that he'd built walls on every side, and yet had left one small door, called home once a year, kept one line open. You've always known how to love people, she said. You just convinced yourself it wasn't safe. He looked at her across the booth. When did you figure that out? Just now, she said honestly. The pancakes are inspirational, he said, and there was the almost smile again, and she felt it again, that bell struck true, and this time she let herself feel it for a second longer before she looked away. Don't push your luck, she said. Never, he said. And then Amelia. Nathaniel, I love you. The diner was quiet around them, some old song playing low from a speaker somewhere, a waitress filling someone's coffee 3 booths away. I know, she said, because she had always known. The knowing had never been the problem. I'm not saying it to get something, he said. I'm not saying it as a move. I'm saying it because today reminded me that not saying true things costs something you don't get back. She looked at him for a long time, measured what she felt. What she trusted, what she was willing to risk. I love you too, she said. I never stopped. I want you to know that it was never about the love. It was about everything around the love that wasn't working. I know, he said. And I'm not fully there yet, she said. I want to be honest. There are still things I'm watching for. Things I need to see before I trust it completely. Tell me what they are, he said. Not so I can perform them. So I know what matters to you. She thought about it seriously. Consistency, she said. Not when it's easy. When it's inconvenient. When you're stressed and the deal is bad and you'd rather disappear into work. That's fair. Honesty when something's wrong. Not at me. With me. Okay. She paused. I need you to keep asking. Not assume. Keep asking what I need, what I want, how I'm doing. Not because you're performing care. Because you're actually curious. I'm actually curious, he said. I've been curious for 3 years. I was just too self-absorbed to ask, I know, she said. That's why I'm still sitting here. He reached across the table. Put his hand on hers. She looked at it, his hand on hers, and thought, this is the moment. Not the grand gesture. Not the speech, this. A booth in a roadside diner. Cold pancakes. His hand on mine. And both of us telling the truth. She turned her hand over. Held his. Okay, she said. We try, he said. What nobody tells you about rebuilding something is how ordinary it looks from the outside. There was no single moment of reconciliation, no cinematic scene where everything became clear and the music swelled. What there was instead was a series of Tuesdays, ordinary, imperfect, sometimes frustrating Tuesdays in which two people made choices. Nathaniel started keeping the notebook more seriously. Not a journal, he was not a journal person. He'd tried it twice and abandoned it both times, but a small running list of things he didn't want to forget. Her work calendar. The names of the kids in the Harrison High program she mentioned by name. The specific way she took her coffee on tired mornings versus regular mornings. The things that mattered to her that he had spent 3 years letting slip by. He showed her the notebook once. By accident she'd reached across his desk for a pen, and the notebook had opened to a page with her name at the top and a list below it, and she'd gone very still. What is this? She said. Things I don't want to forget, he said. Not defensive. Not embarrassed. Things I should have been remembering all along. She looked at the list for a long moment. Her sister's birthday. The name of the community garden that used to be on Harrison Street. The date of her first grant as director. The way she always ordered the same thing at their favorite Thai place, but told herself every time she was going to try something new. You noticed the Thai place thing, she said. I notice more than I used to let on, he said. I just never made it mean anything. I'm making it mean something now. She handed the notebook back. She didn't say anything. She went back to what she'd been doing. But that evening, she came to where he was sitting and kissed him on the forehead briefly, simply, like it was something she'd been doing forever, and walked away. And he sat there and felt the weight of it, so light, so enormous. The twist that Amelia hadn't seen coming arrived on a Friday afternoon, 3 weeks before she was set to formally launch the Bauer program. Elliot came into her office and closed the door, which he only did when something was serious. I need to tell you something, he said, and I need you to hear it without making it weird. She put her pen down. That's a concerning opener. I've been offered a position, he said, in San Francisco. It's a significant role, director of a coalition. Much bigger than what we're building here. She looked at him. When, she said, I got the call yesterday. I've been sitting with it. Elliot, I haven't said yes, he said quickly. I haven't said anything. But I needed to tell you because you'd hear it from someone else, and I didn't want that. She sat back, absorbed it. The Bauer expansion was structured around her, but Elliot was the operational core, the person who knew every program detail, every community contact, every logistical thread. Losing him would not break the work, but it would change it substantially. Is this what you want? She asked. It's what I would have wanted a year ago, he said. Before this. Before you rebuilt what this place is. That's not an answer. He was quiet. I don't know yet, he said honestly. I'm trying to figure out what I want and estimate it from I feel like I owe. You don't owe me anything, she said. You've given this program everything. If there's a bigger opportunity, it's not about bigger, he said. And then carefully, can I say something that might be too much? Since when do you ask permission? Since it involves you and Nathaniel, he said. She went still. I'm not going to say I haven't had feelings, Elliot said. That would be a lie, and I respect you too much to lie. But I also know what's real and what's wishful. And what's real is that you love him. What's real is that watching him become the person you needed him to be it's been hard to watch, and also the right thing to see. He looked at his hands. I think maybe part of why this San Francisco thing feels possible now is that I know you're okay. That you have what you needed. The room was very quiet. Elliot, she said. Don't, he said. Please don't thank me or apologize. Just tell me I was good at this job. You were the best part of this job, she said. For a year that needed a best part, he nodded once. Looked up. I haven't decided yet, he said. I might stay. I genuinely don't know. Whatever you decide it for you. Not for me. Not for anyone, for you. That's what you would say, he said, almost smiling. It's what's true, she said. He stood, he picked up his coffee mug. At the door, he turned back. For what it's worth, I think you two are going to be okay. The real kind of okay, not the performance. I think so too, she said. Some days is enough, he said. Some days is more than most people get. She told Nathaniel about Elliot that night. All of it. The job offer and the conversation and the part about feelings and the part about watching, and the part Elliot had said you love him with the calm certainty of someone who'd made peace with a truth he hadn't chosen. Nathaniel listened to the whole thing without interrupting, which was new and real and something she registered. When she finished, he said, He's a good man, he is, she said. I was jealous of him, Nathaniel said, for a while. Not because I thought, but because he could see you. And I couldn't. And you were right in front of me. I know you were jealous. Was it obvious? The night of the company fundraiser? Nathaniel, you practically growled. Something shifted on his face, embarrassment, and underneath it, something rueful and honest. I had no right to be jealous, he said. I hadn't been showing up. You deserved someone showing up. You're showing up now, she said. Yeah, he said, I am. I know, she said, I notice. I need you to keep telling me when I'm not, he said. I need you to not go quiet again. When I slip, 'cause I probably will, not out of not caring, but out of habit, I need you to say something. And I need you to hear it when I do, she said, not get defensive. Not explain, just deal, he said. This isn't a negotiation, she said. I know, it's a commitment. He looked at her steadily. I'm committing. She looked at him for a long moment. The man across from her was the same man who had spent 3 years looking through her. He was also different. Not because she'd changed him, she hadn't, and she didn't want the weight of that. He'd changed himself. Slowly, imperfectly, driven by something that had finally cracked open in him. She didn't know yet what the next years would look like. She had learned hard not to assume the shape of the future. But she believed him, not blindly, not completely. But enough. Enough was right now the bravest thing she knew how to do. The Bauer Foundation launch dinner was on a Thursday evening in May, in a reception space in the South End that Catherine Webb's team had booked, and Amelia had quietly redirected to be smaller. More personal, more in keeping with what the work actually was. 60 people, community partners, program staff, a few donors, representatives from the Boston City Council. Diana was there. Helen Brooks drove down from Hadley, which nobody had asked her to do, and which moved Amelia in a way she hadn't expected. Nathaniel was there in a suit with no tie, which she'd specifically requested, and he stood in the corner of the room for the first 20 minutes, doing something she'd never seen him do at a professional event. He listened, not networking, not calculating. He was talking to one of the Harrison High kids, a 16-year-old named Marcus Jr., no relation to his Marcus, who had been in the program for 2 years, and who was presenting a small piece of his work that evening, and he was listening to him the way he'd been learning to listen to Amelia. With his whole attention, with follow-up questions. With the particular quality of someone who was genuinely curious about the answer. She watched from across the room. Elliot appeared at her shoulder. He'd decided to stay at least through the launch. San Francisco was still a possibility. everything was still a possibility. But tonight he was here. "Look at that," he said, tilting his head toward Nathaniel and Marcus Jr. "I see it," she said. "Told you," he said, "don't be smug." "I'm not smug," he said. "I'm satisfied. There's a difference." Diana appeared on her other side. "You look happy," she said, with the precision of a woman who had been watching her sister's face for 41 years. "Not performed happy. I am," Amelia said. And then, because Diana deserved the full truth, and also scared. And also watching. And also happy, Diana said. "Let that be what you lead with tonight." She let it be what she led with. When she stepped to the front of the room to speak, no podium, just her. Standing in front of the people who had built this thing with her, she talked about the work. About the kids. About what it meant to build something that outlasted the people who built it, that gave other people room to grow, that solved problems quietly, and returned to the background before anyone knew to say thank you. She didn't say Nathaniel's name. She didn't say Elliot's name. But when she looked up from the room and found Nathaniel's eyes, and found him already looking, already there, already present, she said, "And I want to thank the people who showed me, one way or another, that being seen is not something you earn. It's something you deserve. And the people worth having in your life are the ones who know that without being told." The room applauded. Nathaniel didn't look away. She held his gaze across the room and felt, in her chest, the complicated whole of it, the 3 years, the silence, the slow breaking open, the hard rebuilding. The love that had survived itself and come out the other side into something more honest, more chosen, more real. Not perfect, not without the scar tissue of what it had cost. But real. After the dinner, after the room had emptied and the caterers were packing up, and Diana had hugged her hard, and Helen had pressed her hand, and Elliot had said go home with a look that meant exactly what it said. After all of it, Nathaniel found her by the coat rack. "Ready," he said. "Almost," she said. "I want to do one more walkthrough." "I'll wait," he said, and sat down in one of the folding chairs that hadn't been stacked yet, and took out his phone and looked at it for approximately 4 seconds, and put it back in his pocket and just waited. Present. Quiet there, she did her walkthrough. She checked every corner, the way she always did, the way she had always been the last one in the room to leave, making sure everything was in order before she could rest. She came back to him. He stood. "Okay," she said, "let's go home." He held the door for her. She walked through it. He followed. And the night outside was cool and clear, and the city was doing what it always did, moving, humming, carrying its million ordinary lives forward, and they walked to the car together. And it was simple, and it was real, and it was enough. More than enough. It was the beginning of everything that came after. 6 months after the Bauer Foundation launch, Amelia Hartwell was late for the first time in her professional life. Not late to work, late to her own life. Late to realize that the thing she had been building so carefully, so methodically, brick by brick and day by day, the walls, the measurements, the careful distance she maintained between what she felt and what she allowed herself to trust, was costing her something she hadn't budgeted for. It was a Tuesday. Of course it was a Tuesday. She was in Philadelphia in the 3rd week of the expansion rollout, sitting in a conference room with 4 city council representatives and a program coordinator named Sandra, who reminded her powerfully of herself, at 26, bright and careful and slightly too willing to make herself small in rooms full of loud people. The meeting had run 2 hours over. Her phone had 17 notifications she hadn't looked at. She had eaten half a granola bar at 2 p.m. and nothing else. Her phone buzzed on the table. Nathaniel. She let it go to voicemail. She stayed in the meeting. She did what she always did, finished the thing in front of her completely before moving to the next thing. The meeting ended. She gathered her materials. Sandra caught her at the door. "Miss Hartwell," Sandra said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. How do you do it?" Sandra said. "All of this. The travel, the program, the how do you not lose yourself in it?" Amelia looked at her, thought about the question seriously, the way she tried to take all serious questions seriously. You don't not lose yourself, she said. You lose yourself, and then you find yourself again. You just have to make sure the people around you know where to look. Sandra nodded slowly, like she was filing that away. Amelia walked out into the Philadelphia evening and called Nathaniel back. He answered immediately. Hey, how'd it go? Long, she said. Good but long. Did you eat? Half a granola bar. Amelia. I know. There's a place 2 blocks from your hotel. Marcus looked it up. Mediterranean. I texted you the address an hour ago. She stopped walking. You had Marcus look up restaurants in Philadelphia for me. Marcus offered, Nathaniel said. I may have mentioned you had a long meeting day. You talked to Marcus about my day. We talk about a lot of things. He asks about you. He always has, actually, I just never paid attention. She stood on the Philadelphia sidewalk in the November cold and felt something she had been carefully managing for 6 months finally stop being careful. It moved through her chest, warm and unguarded and large. I'll find the restaurant, she said. Good, Nathaniel. Yeah, I miss you. She said it plainly, without preparation, the way you say true things when you're tired enough that the armor comes down without your permission. I miss you. A pause. When he spoke, his voice was different, quieter, more from the center of something. I miss you too. Come home when you can. The apartment is too quiet. I thought you liked quiet. I like your kind of quiet, he said. Your quiet is different. She didn't trust herself to say anything else. Good night, Nathaniel. Good night, Amelia. She found the restaurant. She ate a real meal. She sat alone at a corner table in a city that wasn't home and thought about what home meant now, and what it had taken to get here, and what it was still costing, and whether the cost was worth it. She decided it was. Not because everything was resolved, it wasn't. Not because trust was complete, it wasn't that either. Not yet, maybe not for a while. But because she was sitting alone in Philadelphia, having just told someone she missed him, and meant it without fear. That was not a small thing. That was in fact everything. She came home on a Friday. Nathaniel picked her up from South Station, which she hadn't asked him to do, and which he'd apparently decided to do anyway because, as he put it when she texted to say she'd landed. I was going to be on this side of town anyway, which was a lie so transparent she almost called him on it, and then decided to let him have it. He was waiting at the bottom of the platform steps. No flowers, no sign, no performance. Just him, in a coat she'd bought him last winter because she'd noticed his old one had a broken zipper that he'd been tolerating for 2 years without fixing because he couldn't be bothered. And he was looking at his phone, and he looked up when he heard her, and the expression on his face was so uncomplicated and so genuine that it hit her somewhere behind the sternum. Hi, he said. Hi, she said. He took her bag, she let him. They walked to the car, and she told him about Philadelphia and Sandra and the council meeting, and he listened and asked about Sandra specifically. Is she going to be okay in that room without you? And she said, I think so, actually. She's tougher than she looks. And he said, sounds familiar, and she said, don't be charming. It's annoying. And he said, I'm not being charming. I'm being accurate, and she laughed. Real and unguarded. And it felt so easy that it almost scared her. Almost. She was getting better at letting easy be easy without waiting for it to break. The first real test came 3 weeks later, and it arrived, as real tests tend to, without announcement. Nathaniel had a deal closing the Pemberton acquisition, the one that had been in play for 8 months, the one his entire fourth quarter was built around. It closed on a Wednesday, and it went wrong at the last minute. Not catastrophically wrong, but significantly wrong, and he spent 12 hours in a conference room with lawyers, and it was 10:45 when he got home. Amelia was awake. Not waiting in the old way she'd been working, genuinely at her desk with her own deadlines, but awake. She heard him come in. She heard the particular way he moved when something had gone badly, not loud, not dramatic, the opposite of that, a careful, deliberate quietness that meant he was managing something large. She came out of the office. He was in the kitchen with a glass of water and his jacket over a chair, and the look on his face she now recognized as the one that preceded either shutting down or opening up, and which one he chose would tell her everything about where they were. "Pemberton," she said. "How bad?" "Bad enough." He set the glass down. Looked at her. "I don't want to get into the details tonight." "My head," as he pressed 2 fingers to his temple. "But I need to tell you it was bad. I don't want to just say I'm fine." She looked at him. He was not shutting down. He was not disappearing into work or deflecting with its nothing, or asking her to leave him alone with it. He was telling her it was bad and telling her he didn't want to pretend otherwise. "Okay," she said. "Do you want company or space?" "Company," he said. "Just come sit with me. You don't have to say anything." She came and sat with him. They were on the couch, his arm around her, her head against his shoulder, and neither of them said much. Just let the quiet be companionable instead of empty, and after a while he exhaled long and slow and said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For asking which one I needed instead of assuming." She was quiet for a moment. "You told me once that you handled things alone because people were unreliable," she said. "You didn't say it like that, but that was what it meant." "I know you can rely on me," she said. "I want you to." "That's not a performance. That's a fact." He pulled her slightly closer. "I know," he said. "I'm learning to let it be a fact." "How's that going?" "Terrifying," he said. "Necessary." "Good," she said. "Keep going." The twist that arrived in January was the kind that reordered everything, and it came from the last person Amelia expected. Helen Brooks called on a Saturday morning. Not Nathaniel's phone. Amelia's. She'd given Helen her number in Hadley, at the hospital, the kind of automatic courtesy you extend without thinking, and Helen had clearly kept it with the careful intention of someone who did not do things carelessly. "I hope I'm not interrupting," Helen said. "Not at all." "Is everything okay, Robert?" "Robert is stable, cantankerous and recovering, which is his natural state." A pause with something warm in it. "I wanted to call you specifically, not Nathaniel." "Okay," Amelia said carefully. "I want to tell you something I should have said in Hadley and didn't, because I didn't know you well enough yet." Helen's voice was measured, deliberate. "My son spent 35 years learning the wrong lessons from the right fear. He watched his father be absent, and he told himself he'd never be absent in the same way. He wasn't. He was absent in a completely different way that he couldn't see because he was so busy not being his father." Amelia sat down. "I should have taught him better," Helen said. "That's my piece of it, and I own it. But here's what I called to say. The man he is right now, I have not seen this version of my son before. Not ever. Not at his best. Not at his most successful. Not at any point in 35 years." A pause. "You did that. He did that," Amelia said. "You stayed long enough for him to do it," Helen said. "That's not a small thing. Most people wouldn't have." "I almost didn't," Amelia admitted. "I know, he knows too." Helen's voice shifted into something quieter. "I'm calling because I want you to know that whatever you decide about him, about all of it, you have an ally in me. Not because you're with my son, because you're you." Amelia was quiet for a moment. Then, "Thank you, Helen." "Take care of yourself first," Helen said. "You can't pour from an empty cup." Lord knows I learned that too late. After the call ended, Amelia sat with the phone in her hand for a long time. Then she went to find Nathaniel. He was in the kitchen. Saturday mornings had become his. Somehow, the coffee and the eggs, and the particular unhurried quality he brought to weekend mornings that she had come to love in the way you love something you didn't know you needed. "Your mother called me," she said. He turned. "She what?" "On my phone, she called me." He looked genuinely surprised, which was rare enough to be notable. "What did she say?" Amelia sat at that counter. "She said she's never seen this version of you before. And that you did the work, and that I should take care of myself first." A pause. "She's remarkable." Nathaniel turned back to the stove. She could see the line of his shoulders and what was moving through them. "She is," he said. "She always was. I just spent too long being angry at the situation to see her clearly. She said she should have taught you better." "She taught me everything good I know," he said. I filtered it through what my father did. It came out wrong, Nathaniel. He turned. Call her more than once a year, she said. Something crossed his face, a complicated, grateful, slightly undone expression that he didn't try to manage. Yeah, he said, I will, good. She reached for the coffee he'd already poured. Now make me eggs, I have a conference call at noon. On a Saturday? Chicago doesn't care that it's Saturday. He made her eggs, she took the conference call. He sat at the kitchen table with his laptop while she was on the call, not working on anything critical. Just present, just there, and when she hung up he looked up and said, How'd it go? And she said, Good. Sandra ran the whole thing herself, and he said, Told you she was tough, and she said I said that, and he said I agreed with you, and she threw a dish towel at him and he caught it, and the morning was easy and real and good. February arrived with a cold front and a conversation she had not planned. It was a Sunday night. They were in the living room. Amelia with her feet tucked under her, Nathaniel reading something on his tablet. Ordinary. Quiet. The good kind. She said, I want to ask you something and I want you to answer without managing it. He set the tablet down, gave her his full attention. Okay. Are you happy, she said. Not with the work. Not with the deal pipeline or the Pemberton restructure or whatever comes next. Are you happy here? With this? He didn't answer immediately, which was the right move. She would have been suspicious of an immediate answer. Yes, he said. Not the way I used to think happy was supposed to feel like success, like a finish line. But yes, this is the first time in my adult life that I come home and the home is the point. Not the rest of it, that's a big thing to say. It's a true thing, he said. You know I don't say things because they sound good. I know, she said, that's why I asked. He looked at her. Are you happy? She thought about it genuinely, the way she'd asked him to. I'm getting there, she said. I'm more myself than I've been in years. I like my work. I like who I'm becoming, and she paused. I like who we're becoming, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. That's enough for me, he said. For right now, that's more than enough. It's not the destination, she said. No, he agreed. But it's real, and real is better than perfect. She looked at him across the couch, this man who had taken 3 years, and a slow breaking apart and a conscious rebuilding, to become someone worth the full weight of her trust, and she felt, without the armor for once, without the watching and the measuring and the careful cataloging, loved. Not just loving, loved, seen, present in someone else's life in a way that cost him something to sustain, and he sustained it anyway. Come here, she said. He moved closer. She leaned against him. His arm came around her, the way it had in the hospital waiting room, and the diner and the couch after Pemberton, easy, present, like he had finally learned that being there was its own language. They stayed like that for a long time. Nobody checked their phone. Nobody had somewhere else to be. March brought the first anniversary of everything, not the relationship, which had technically been ongoing for 4 years now, but the anniversary of the morning she'd set down his coffee and walked out the door without looking back. She hadn't planned to mark it. It wasn't the kind of thing you celebrated. Nathaniel apparently had a different idea. She came home from work on a Tuesday, of course a Tuesday, to find the apartment exactly as it always was. No flowers, no candles, no performance. Just him, home before her for once, at the kitchen table with the notebook open and a pen in his hand. She put down her bag. What are you doing? Writing something, he said. In the notebook? Yeah. She came to look. He didn't cover it. It was a list. Not labeled, not headed with anything. Just a list in his particular handwriting, which she knew well by now, the clean block letters. Slightly compressed. The handwriting of someone who wrote fast because his mind moved faster than his hand. She read it. It was a list of the things he noticed now. The way she always made 2 cups of coffee, even when she was in a rush and only drank 1. The way she read the last page of a book before she started it and then pretended she hadn't. The way she stood outside before getting in her car every morning, just for a second, like she was getting her bearings, before the day started. The way she said okay when she meant I hear you and meant something different when she said fine. The way she always thanked the janitor in their building by name. It went on 2 pages, small observations, specific accumulated. A year of paying attention distilled into ink. She read it twice. Nathaniel, she said. I started it the morning after you walked into my office with the deli food, he said. I didn't know what else to do. I started writing down what I saw. So I wouldn't stop seeing it. She sat down across from him. She didn't trust her voice entirely. I'm not giving this to you as a grand gesture, he said. I just wanted you to know it exists, that I'm keeping it. That I'm not going back to the man who didn't keep track. You remember the granola bar thing, she said. Her voice was steady. She was proud of it. Philadelphia, November. You ate half a granola bar and I had Marcus look up restaurants, he said. It's in there. She looked at the list again, found it. Halfway down the second page, Philadelphia, half granola bar. Mediterranean restaurant. She found it, called me after. And next to it, in parentheses, small, said she missed me. She closed the notebook. She pushed it back to him. Keep writing, she said. I plan to, he said. She stood up. Came around the table. He turned in his chair and she held his face in her hands, and she looked at him, really looked, the way she had stopped doing for a year because looking had become too costly, and what she saw was a man who had done the work. Not perfectly, not without stumbling, but genuinely, consistently, with his whole stubborn, capable self. I love you, she said. I love you, he said back, without hesitation, without performance, like breathing. I'm not all the way there yet, she said, with the trust. I want to be honest, I know, he said. I'll still be here when you are. What if it takes a long time? Then it takes a long time, he said. I'm not going anywhere, I told you that. You told me a lot of things, she said. And I showed you most of them, he said. I'm going to keep showing you until the things and the showing line up completely. She looked at him for one more moment. Then she kissed him, not urgently, not dramatically, the way you kiss someone when you're finally, carefully, fully present. The way you kiss someone when you mean it with everything you have, and you're not afraid of them knowing. He kissed her back the same way. Elliot took the San Francisco job in April. He told her on a Wednesday, in her office, with the door closed, with the particular careful energy of someone who had made a decision they were at peace with and wanted the other person to be at peace with it too. When, she said. June 1st, he said, gives us 2 months to transition. 2 months is enough, she said. Sandra can step up. She's ready. Sandra was ready 3 months ago, he agreed. A pause. Are you okay? I'm going to miss you, she said directly. This office will not be the same, and the program will not be the same, and I think that's appropriate, because you made it what it is. We made it what it is, he said. Elia. Take the win, she said. You built something. Own it. He was quiet for a moment. How are things, he said. With Nathaniel. Good, she said. Really good, the sustainable kind. No asterisk, small asterisk, she said, the honest kind. We're still figuring it out. That's the right answer, he said. I know, she said. I spent 3 years thinking love was supposed to be figured out. I understand now that the good kind never fully is. He nodded. Then he stood, and she stood, and she hugged him properly, the kind of hug you give someone who has been a genuine presence in your life, who showed up at exactly the right moment for exactly the right reasons and never asked for anything in return. Thank you, she said into his shoulder, for the coffee and the questions, and the not pushing and the pushing when it mattered. Thank you, he said, for showing me what it looked like to build something real. He left at the end of May with a card from the whole office and a party that ran 2 hours longer than planned because nobody wanted to be the one who signaled it was over. Sandra cried. 3 of the Harrison High kids made a video. Amelia held it together until she was in the car, and then she let herself feel it, the specific grief of someone good moving on to something better, which was the right grief, the kind that meant it mattered. She called Nathaniel from the parking lot. "He's really gone," she said. "I know," Nathaniel said. "How are you sad?" she said. "And grateful. And okay, all three," he said. "All three," she agreed. "Come home," he said. "I made dinner." "You made actual dinner?" "I watched 2 videos," he said, "down from 4. I'm getting better." She laughed even now, even through the Elliot-shaped sadness, and started the car. "I'm coming home," she said. "I'll be here," he said. She knew he would be. That was the thing, the new and extraordinary and completely ordinary thing. She knew he would be there. Not as a performance, not as a demonstration, just there. Present, choosing her, the way she had always deserved and had waited too long to accept that she deserved. She drove home. The last piece arrived quietly, the way the most important things always did. It was a Saturday morning in July, almost exactly a year after the Bauer Foundation launch, and they were in the kitchen, Nathaniel, with coffee and the notebook. Amelia with her laptop and the Chicago program reports that she kept meaning to get to on weekdays and kept not getting to because weekdays were for everything else. The apartment was warm. Outside, the city was doing its summer thing loud and alive, and entirely indifferent to the small human lives conducted inside its buildings. Nathaniel looked up from the notebook and said, "I want to ask you something." She looked up. "Okay, not today," he said. "I have a question I want to ask you." "Not today. But I want you to know it's coming so you can think about it if you want." She looked at him carefully. "What kind of question?" "The permanent kind," he said. She was very still. "I'm not rushing you," he said quickly, steadily. "I'm not asking now, I'm telling you so there's no surprise. So you have time to think about what you want, what you actually want. Not what you think you should want or what would make things easier. What you want." She looked at him for a long time. "Why are you telling me now?" she said. "Because I spent 3 years not telling you things that mattered," he said. "I'm not doing that anymore, even when what I have to tell you is inconvenient or scary or too much. You told me you needed honesty when something was real. This is real." She looked at the table, at her coffee, at the Chicago reports, at the morning light and the city outside and the kitchen that had become gradually, imperfectly, through 100 ordinary choices home. She thought about the woman who had set down a coffee cup a year ago and walked out a door and not looked back. She thought about what that woman had needed and what she had built and what it had cost and what it had returned. She thought about Nathaniel Brooks, who had been capable all along of this, of presence, of attention, of love that cost him something and had simply needed to want it badly enough to choose it every day. She thought about what Diana had said, "Some people wake up too late. But some people don't." She looked up. "I'll think about it," she said. He nodded. "That's all I'm asking, Nathaniel." "Yeah." "For what it's worth," she said carefully, "I don't think I'm going to need very long." Something moved across his face, slow and real and unmanaged. He didn't reach for her. He didn't perform the moment. He just looked at her with his whole finely open face and said, "Okay." Just that. Okay. The word he had learned to say without condition, without expectation, without the unspoken weight of someone keeping score. The word that meant, "I hear you and I trust you and I'm here all at once." She picked up her coffee. He picked up his pen. They went back to their Saturday morning. Outside, the Charles River moved the way it always moved, steady, unhurried, indifferent to the small human lives conducted above it. Not waiting for anyone, not marking time. But inside that kitchen, 2 people were marking time in the only way that mattered, not counting the days that had passed, but choosing the day in front of them. Choosing it deliberately, eyes open, with full knowledge of what it had cost to arrive here, and full intention of never taking it for granted again. Amelia Hartwell had spent 3 years trying to be seen by someone standing right in front of her. She had walked away. She had built herself back. She had learned the hard, necessary, irreplaceable way that you could not pour from an empty cup, that love was not proven by endurance but by growth. that the right person was not the one who never lost you, but the one who learned, genuinely and at cost, to choose you every day. And Nathaniel Brooks, who had been so afraid of needing people that he'd built walls against the very thing he wanted, most had done the work. Slowly, imperfectly, with the same focused intensity he brought to everything, finally turned on something that deserved it. He had learned to see her. He had learned to say so. He had learned to show up not when it was impressive, but when it was inconvenient, not when it was easy, but when it required something. Not with words alone, but with the accumulating evidence of 1,000 small daily choices that said, without performance, without negotiation, I see you, I choose you, I am not going anywhere. Love is not proven by how long someone stays. Love is proven by whether someone learns to value the person who stayed and then becomes day by day the kind of person worth staying for. They had both finally become that, and that was enough. That was everything. That was the beginning of the rest of it, ordinary and imperfect and entirely, completely, irreversibly real. End of part 5. End of story.